Ever heard about that massive MySpace hack back in 2005?
You mean the one with the self-replicating Sammy is my hero message? Yeah, that was something else.
That, my friends, was an early taste of cross-site scripting, or as the cool kids call it, XSS.
XSS.
And that, my friends, is exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds fun.
Our trusty guide for this deep dive is, it's this book called Cross-Site Scripting, Attacks, XS Exploits, and Defense.
Yeah, it's a pretty dense read.
Dense, maybe, but it's packed with, all the technical nitty-gritty you could ever want on this topic.
True. It does really break down how these attacks work, down to the nuts and bolts.
It's like imagine learning the anatomy of a virus, right?
Right.
The better we understand how these things work, the better we can protect ourselves.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how web security has changed so much over the years.
How so?
Well, it used to be all about firewalls and, setting up a strong perimeter defense.
Right.
But now it's totally different.
Different how?
Now it's all about web applications. Each one, basically, with its own potential weak spots.
So wait, are you saying that the code itself is often the weakest link? Not just the network?
Exactly. Think about all the forms we fill out online, comment sections, you name it. Anything where we, as users, interact with a website, it's all potentially vulnerable.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
And the thing is, XSS attacks, they exploit the trust we have in these websites.
Trust, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you're, logging into your bank,
Yeah.
right? Everything seems normal.
Okay.
But without you knowing it, a hidden script is running in the background.
Uh-oh.
Instead of your credentials going to the bank like they should, they get sent straight to a hacker.
That's a little unnerving.
Yeah.
But hold on a sec. Don't browsers have, built-in security measures to stop one site from messing with data from another?
Yeah, they do.
What about that same origin policy thingy?
Oh, you're right. That's a good point. The same origin policy, it's designed to keep websites isolated from each other.
Yeah.
For exactly that reason.
Oh.
But here's the thing. Hackers, they're clever.
Oh, boy.
They've figured out some really tricky ways to get around it. They basically trick the browser.
Trick it how?
They make it run their malicious code as if it were coming from the trusted site.
So they're digital escape artists or something? Finding all these loopholes in the system.
Yeah, I like that. Escape artists.
Yeah.
And they've got all sorts of tricks up their sleeves.
Like what?
Well, one example, and this is straight from the book, is how they can use something as simple as an image tag to steal your cookies.
Wait, cookies? You mean those little text files that websites use to, remember our logins and stuff?
Yeah, those.
They can steal those with an image?
Yep. And that's just, one tiny example.
Wow.
There are all kinds of XSS attacks out there, each one more dangerous than the last.
Okay, well, let's start with the basics then. What different types of XSS attacks are there?
Sure. So first, you've got your non-persistent XSS. Think of it like a booby-trapped link.
Okay.
It only works if someone actually clicks on it.
Mm-hmm. That sounds kind of like those phishing emails, the ones that try to trick you into giving up your password.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's non-persistent. What else is there?
Well, then you've got persistent XSS, which is it's a whole other level of sneaky.
Oh, no.
This is where the attacker actually injects code into a part of the website that stores, user-generated content.
Like a comment section.
Yeah, exactly. Like a comment section or a forum post or something like that.
So anyone who visits that page, even if they don't click on anything specific, they could still be affected.
Yep. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because the code's right there, embedded in the site itself.
Yikes.
Makes it much harder to find and get rid of.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Non-persistent is like a targeted attack, right? While persistent is more like setting a trap for, anyone who happens to wander by.
You got it.
Right.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so 2 down. What other kinds of XSS are there?
Well, there's also this thing called DOM-based XSS.
DOM-based. What's that all about?
It's a bit different. It exploits vulnerabilities in the actual client-side code of the website.
Client-side. So it's not attacking the server directly.
Right.
It's more about, exploiting a weakness in how the website's code interacts with the user's browser.
Exactly. The book gives this example of a chat application that has, flawed input validation.
Okay.
A hacker could use that to, steal everyone's chat history.
Whoa. So even websites that seem totally harmless can have these hidden vulnerabilities, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
Makes you think twice about everything you do online.
That's why it's so crucial to, to really get a handle on how these different XSS attacks work
Mm-hmm.
and how to spot them.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's keep going. What else should we know about?
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about redirection attacks.
Redirection attacks.
Yeah, this is where social engineering really comes into play.
Ooh, social engineering. Now that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine you get an email, looks totally legit, seems to be from your bank. It's got a link in it, tells you to update your account info.
Right. I've seen those.
You click the link, thinking you're going to your bank's website, but
Right.
surprise, you get redirected to a totally fake site.
Uh-oh.
One that's designed to steal your login info.
Wow. So it's all about manipulating people, right?
Right.
Using psychology to trick them into doing something they wouldn't normally do.
Exactly. And attackers are getting really, really good at disguising these malicious URLs. You'd never suspect a thing.
Okay, now this is starting to feel like a digital spy movie or something.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah. And the book talks about this real-world attack against Yahoo, actually. They use these really complicated, obfuscated URLs to send people to all sorts of malicious sites.
Wow. So even big companies like Yahoo can be vulnerable to this stuff.
That's why you always got to be careful.
Always double check those links, right?
Yes. A healthy dose of skepticism can go a long way online.
So we've covered, the different types of XSS attacks, redirection tactics. What else should we be aware of?
Well, the source material also talks about refer URLs. You know, those digital breadcrumbs that basically tell a website where you came from?
Oh, right, like leaving a trail of your browsing history. So does that mean websites can actually track everything we do online?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
Refer URLs are useful for stuff like, website analytics and things like that.
Yeah.
But they can also be, they can be manipulated by attackers.
How so?
They can be, blanked out or even faked,
Yeah.
made to point to malicious sites.
So relying on those for security purposes is probably not the best idea.
Right. It can be a problem. And speaking of problems, that brings us to another fun topic.
Oh, boy. Hit me.
Cross-site request forgery, or for short, CSRF.
Okay, CSRF, another acronym for the collection. What's that one all about?
Okay, so imagine a hacker. They want to exploit your legit session on a website
Okay.
to do stuff, without you knowing.
Without me knowing.
It's like they're stealing your login, but they're using it to make changes to your account, all while you're none the wiser.
Whoa. So it's not like they're breaking in, right?
Right.
It's more like they're using your existing access to do their dirty work.
You got it. And the book gives this chilling example.
Go on.
Imagine a CSRF attack that uses an image tag, right, to transfer money from your bank account without you ever clicking a button or anything.
Hold on. That's officially terrifying. How is that even possible?
It all boils down to trust.
Trust.
Yeah, the trust that websites put in your active session. If a hacker can craft the right request,
Yeah.
they can basically piggyback on your authentication, do stuff on your behalf.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about that.
Yeah.
So what can we even do to protect ourselves from something like that? Is it even possible?
Well, there are things that websites can do, like secure session management, really solid input validation, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But as users, we got to be extra careful.
Careful about what?
The websites we use, the links we click, all of it.
So staying informed, being skeptical.
Yes, absolutely.
Those are key, right?
Yeah. But I know this is a lot to take in.
It is. It's like the internet is this giant minefield of vulnerabilities. It's scary. Is anything actually safe out there?
That's a great question. And I get why you'd ask that.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Yeah.
don't despair.
Don't despair. Okay.
The book, it also talks about ways to mitigate these risks
It does.
from both sides, from the developer's point of view and, as users too. It's like learning to navigate that minefield you were talking about safely.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better.
Okay.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Understanding these threats, that's the first step.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power,
Hmm.
especially in the online world.
I like that. Knowledge is power. So let's keep diving into this book then. Let's see what other secrets it's hiding.
Sounds good to me. I have a feeling there's a lot more to uncover.
I bet there is. Listeners, stick with us as we continue our deep dive into XSS attacks and, how to stay safe in this crazy digital world. Okay, so we've talked about how websites can be, vulnerable to these XSS attacks.
Right?
But what about all the other stuff we use online?
Like what?
Like Flash, QuickTime, PDFs, those have got to be safe, right?
I wish that were true. But Unfortunately, no.
Seriously, how can something like a flash animation be a security risk?
Well, remember how we were talking about attackers injecting malicious code into websites, JavaScript and all that?
Yeah.
Turns out they can do the same thing with Flash files. Hide the bad code right inside the file itself.
So it's like, what, hiding a virus inside a file that seems totally harmless?
Exactly. And the book actually mentions how vulnerable those banner-based ad campaigns are to this. Imagine a hacker, right? They create a malicious Flash banner ad.
Yeah.
And then that ad gets displayed on a legit website.
Oh, no.
Anyone who sees that ad, bam, they could be infected.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, it is.
So we got to be wary of all kinds of online content, not just suspicious links and shady websites.
Exactly. And it's not just Flash either. PDFs can be a problem too.
How so?
They can contain JavaScript code as well. And attackers can, exploit flaws in PDF readers to execute that code.
So opening a PDF could actually trigger a hidden script? That's not good.
Not good at all. And what's worse, attackers have figured out ways to automatically open, like file URLs from within those PDFs.
Hold on, so they could potentially access files on my computer.
Yeah, sensitive files too. That's why it's super important to keep your software updated, like your PDF reader, everything.
Right, because updates usually include security patches. Yeah.
Exactly. That's your best defense. Think of it like having the latest antivirus, but for your web browser and all its plugins.
Got it. Updates are crucial. Okay, so we've talked about Flash, PDFs. What other fun things do we need to be aware of?
Oh, there's more. We also have to talk about this thing called HTTP response injection.
HTTP response injection. Okay, bring that down for me. What in the world is that?
It's a bit technical, but basically it involves attackers messing with the headers.
Headers.
Yeah, the headers that your browser gets from a web server. They contain instructions for, how to handle the content you requested.
So they're tampering with the instructions before they even get to my browser.
You got it. And they can inject malicious code into those headers.
And then my browser just blindly executes that code.
Pretty much. And the book gives some pretty crazy examples of how they can use this technique. XSS, cache poisoning, all sorts of nasty stuff.
Okay, this is getting a bit overwhelming. With all these attack vectors and everything, it feels like we're always playing catch-up with these hackers. Is there any way to, stay ahead of the game?
Well, one of the key defenses, and it's a good one, is filtering. Think of it like, having a security checkpoint at the entrance to your website, making sure no harmful code sneaks through.
So filtering is all about checking the data that comes into a website and blocking anything that looks suspicious.
Exactly. And there are two main types: input filtering and output filtering.
Okay, what's the difference between those?
Well, input filtering is like checking everyone's bags at the door, right? You're sanitizing the data that users submit, getting rid of any potentially harmful characters or code.
So you're stopping the bad stuff before it even gets a chance to cause trouble.
Right. But attackers, they're clever, right? They find ways to bypass those filters. That's where output filtering comes in.
So it's like a second layer of security.
Exactly. It involves like encoding the data that's displayed to users. So even if some harmful code slipped past the first filter, it gets neutralized before it can do any damage.
Okay, so it's a two-pronged approach. Stop the bad stuff from getting in, and then neutralize anything that manages to sneak through.
That's a good way to put it.
But with hackers constantly coming up with new tricks, is filtering really enough?
It's a good start, but it's not a silver bullet. We need a layered approach to security.
Layered? Like, what do you mean?
Well, it's like, a castle.
A castle?
Yeah, it needs moats, walls, guards, multiple lines of defense.
Ah, okay. I get it. So it's not just about the technical stuff, right? It's also about, user awareness.
You got it. As users, we have a role to play, too.
Yeah.
We got to be smart about what we do online.
Right. Think before you click, all that. But are there any other, proactive steps we can take?
Oh, definitely. One of the best things you can do is use a password manager.
Password managers. Those things that store all your passwords in one place.
Yeah, exactly.
Aren't those risky, though? What if someone hacks into the password manager itself?
It's a valid concern. But good password managers, they use really strong encryption. Plus, they can generate unique, complex passwords for every single account.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like having a digital vault for all your keys, right?
Exactly. And it takes the pressure off of you to remember dozens of complicated passwords, which, let's face it, is pretty much impossible.
Totally agree. But what's really become clear through this deep dive is that web security, it's a shared responsibility.
Absolutely. Developers, website owners, users, we all have a part to play.
Right. Developers got to write secure code, website owners have to implement the right security measures, and we as users need to, well, we need to be informed and careful.
It's like a three-legged stool. If any one leg is weak, the whole thing falls apart.
Great analogy. So if there's like one big takeaway from all this, what would it be?
Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop learning. Web security is constantly changing, so we got to keep up.
Well said. And speaking of learning, I'm ready to dive into the next part of this book. We've focused a lot on the attacker side of things. I want to see what the defenders are up to, what strategies and tools they're using to, fight back.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Okay, so we've spent like the last two parts of this deep dive really getting into the nitty-gritty of XSS attacks.
Yeah, we have.
And I gotta say, it's been a bit unnerving.
Yeah, I get that.
But now I'm kind of curious to like shift gears a little. Look at the other side of the coin.
The defenders.
Yeah. How do we actually defend against these attacks?
Good question. And luckily for us, the book doesn't just focus on, the vulnerabilities and how they work.
Right.
It also dives into some pretty cool defense strategies.
Awesome.
And one of the most important things to understand is the attacker's mindset. We got to think like them.
So we got to like get inside the heads of the hackers.
Exactly. Figure out what they're looking for, where the weak spots are.
Okay. So what are they looking for when they're, trying to break into a website?
Well, they look for weaknesses, just like any attacker would.
Right.
The book mentions these things called port scanners. They use them to probe websites.
Probe them for what?
For vulnerabilities, like, open ports, outdated software, that kind of thing.
So it's like they're, casing the joint? Looking for any cracks in the armor?
Exactly. And once they find, a potential weakness, they can use all sorts of techniques to exploit it.
Like what?
Well, one really common method is something called SQL injection.
SQL injection. I've heard that term before, but I'm not really sure I understand it. Can you explain it, in simple terms?
Sure. So SQL, it stands for Structured Query Language.
Okay.
And it's basically the language that's used to, talk to databases.
Got it.
Now, in a SQL injection attack, what the hackers do is they manipulate the data that's sent to the database.
Okay.
They trick it into revealing sensitive info or even executing commands that it shouldn't.
So they're basically speaking the database's language and giving it bad instructions.
Yeah, you could say that. And what's really scary is that even a tiny little coding error can create an opening for this type of attack.
Wow. That puts a lot of pressure on developers to write really secure code, huh?
Yeah, it does. And that's why robust input validation and filtering are so crucial.
Right, like we were talking about that earlier.
It's like having a really strict bouncer at the door of your database, making sure only the right people get in.
No shady characters allowed.
Yeah.
But beyond that, are there other things that websites can do to, make themselves less vulnerable?
Definitely. One really important thing is to minimize the amount of user-supplied data that's actually displayed on the site.
So less is more?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
The less data you display, without proper sanitization, of course, the smaller the attack surface for the hackers.
Okay. I see. So it's about reducing the number of potential entry points, right?
Exactly. It's like, a building. The fewer doors and windows it has, the harder it is to break in.
Makes sense. What else?
Another really useful tool is something called a content security policy.
Content security policy, another acronym.
I know. There are a lot of them.
So what does a content security policy do?
Well, it basically lets website owners tell the browser, which sources of content are allowed.
Allowed for what?
To be loaded and executed. It's like a white list of trusted sources.
Ah, okay. That sounds like a pretty powerful way to prevent malicious scripts from, sneaking in from who knows where.
Exactly. But we've been talking a lot about the tech side of things. We got to remember the human element, too.
Right. We as users, we got to do our part.
Totally. Skepticism is your best friend online.
Okay.
Don't click on links you don't trust. Be careful about installing browser extensions, all the stuff we talked about before.
Right. Think before you click.
Yeah.
But are there any other proactive things we can do?
Yeah, actually there is. One of the most effective things is to use a password manager.
Password managers. Those things that store all your passwords in one place.
Yep, that's the one.
Aren't those kind of risky, though? I mean, what if someone hacks into the password manager itself? Then they'd have all your passwords.
I get why you'd think that. But the good ones, they use super strong encryption to protect your data.
Okay.
Plus, they can generate, really unique, complex passwords for each of your accounts.
Yeah.
Makes it way harder for hackers to crack them.
Okay. So it's kind of like having a digital vault for all your keys.
Exactly. And the best part is you don't have to remember all those crazy passwords yourself.
Yeah, that's a huge plus. I'm terrible at remembering passwords. But this whole deep dive has really made me realize that web security, it's a team effort.
Totally agree. It's a collaboration between developers, website owners, and us, the users.
Right. We all have to do our part to keep things safe.
It's like a three-legged stool. If one leg's weak, the whole thing collapses.
Perfect analogy. So if we had to boil all this down to one key takeaway, what would it be?
Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop learning. The world of web security is always changing, so we got to keep up.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Listeners, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of XSS attacks. It's definitely a complicated topic, but hopefully we've shed some light on the threats and how we can all work together to stay safe online. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe out there.